Courtney, thank you so much for having me today. I can't wait to dive into all of your current work, but before we get there, I want to know about little girl Courtney. Have you been illustrating your whole life?
Yeah, actually, I started taking it seriously when I was about 8 years old. I would make little trading cards and I would try to sell them on the playground. And, eventually it formed into comics about 10 years later. But I had always loved drawing. I had always been encouraged to. In high school, it was a little rocky, but I stayed the course. But yeah, when I was 17, I self-published my first book, and then I've been doing it ever since.
Okay, so did it always come naturally to you? Did you see the shapes? It was just kind of innate?
It was more of I wanted to tell a story.
Okay.
When I was, I'm the oldest of 6 kids, big household, little house. And so the only way I was going to get the TV with cable was if I woke up before everyone else.
Okay.
So I would wake up before everyone else to just watch whatever cartoon was on, whatever I could get my eyeballs on. And so, okay, the cartoons are over, but I'm still awake. I want to keep telling the story or make my own. So I would, partner with my friends and we would kind of do our things. It would ebb and flow in and out, but it was always in service to a story. I've grown up with, I don't know if it's been formally diagnosed, I don't believe so, but a mild dyslexia. So I've always wanted to be a part of these stories or to tell stories, but it's always been harder to read. But comics and illustration, they bridge that gap of context and being able to actually focus on the words and what's being said. You'll get to the end of the line and it's like, okay, what did I just read? But, with a comic, it's like, okay, the context of where the characters are, what is happening is in the drawing.
Right.
But then what they're saying is in the word balloons. And usually there's, if it's a well done comic, there's maybe about 20 words in that balloon, and that I can handle.
And they're bite-sized chunks, so that makes sense. I cannot skip over the fact that you self-published a book at 17. First of all, what gives you the chutzpah to do that? And second of all, what are the logistics?
It was a lot of me and my friends just telling jokes. I just want to make people laugh. I want to make them happy. And, whether or not I succeed, that's a whole other thing. But this one made me laugh. And so we went through it. I had my computer and my programs, and I would wake up early and get those done. Or I would work on it when I could. Even in school, I would bring my computer and work on that. But, so we wrote it, we got everything put together. It was a really fast process, actually. And then there are a lot of print-on-demand printers, and they can help. You could just print one book, you could print 1,000 books, but we ended up printing about 50 because we made it in full color, and that got really expensive for a 17-year-old.
Sure.
But a lot of the want to do that, actually, it came from more of a negative emotion, which was spite. A lot of my teachers in high school, they didn't think that comics was viable or that I shouldn't do it just because there's no money. I'm like, you really think any of us do art for the money? And now look at them, comics industry is booming.
Right. Okay, so that's interesting because I was going to ask you, did you have a mentor along the way? Because again, to me, it takes a lot of guts to not only create your work, but then to decide to really put it out into the world. So was there anybody who was kind of showing you that path, or did you forge the whole way by yourself?
That's interesting because I felt like I was forging it all myself. I went on the internet and I learned what I could. Mm-hmm. I did have people who just simply encouraged me. They gave me a table at the show. They looked at it and said, "Good job, kiddo." That's sometimes all you need.
Right.
But a lot of what I did, I argued to say that it's self-taught, but it's self-motivated because I've always been learning from other people. We don't create art in a vacuum, and so I don't feel like self-taught is the right way of saying those things.
Right.
It's like, did you go to school or not? That's what people mean.
Right.
And yes, I did go to school. Whether I learned anything is debatable.
Okay, so actually that takes me back. You mentioned that you were, taking your computer and working on your art. In what programs, and how did you, is that another thing where you just utilized the internet to learn how to take what was in your brain and get it onto the screen? It's one thing to sketch it on paper, but to then get it onto the computer is another thing. That you taught yourself as well?
Yeah, even back then I used basically the same program I use now. It's just under a different name with a different company. They've just they bought it and they made it better. Back then it was called Manga Studio, and now it's called Clip Studio Paint. It is a program specifically made for illustrators and comic artists. They've thought of everything. I tell you what, like I've got panels, I can import my Photoshop brushes, I can do time lapses, I can export to giant file sizes for whatever I might need. So back then I was using kind of the baby version of Clip Studio Paint, and there wasn't a lot of resources out on it. It's quite the learning curve, but I don't like making, and even back then I didn't like making comics on paper because one, paper costs money, and a program you only have to buy it once. But two, it's just one step closer to being print ready.
Tell me about the logistics. Are you drawing the comics using like an iPad or a tablet?
Back then, I would use your run-of-the-mill standard graphics pen tablet where you'd have it here, you'd draw on it, but then you'd be looking at the monitor. Bit of a learning curve, but I feel like it's something that everyone should go through just because it gives you that disconnect between your eye and your hand. And I feel like it does help you draw better. I feel like sometimes you need to unlearn something in order to learn it right or to learn it better. Then I graduated up to using a Cintiq. I still have it, but I don't use it. It doesn't really fit with my setup right now. But I used that for years, and it was just drawn straight on it. Now I use my iPad and use the cloud to move around my files, but I would definitely recommend getting an iPad.
So I'm looking at your work, and one of the things that strikes me is, I don't know how illustrators do it when it comes to making figures that you know exactly what it is, but it's not literal. So how do you just see these things and then you're able to make it come to life?
Back in high school, I would do things because they looked cool. Everybody does in high school, They want to draw the action pose that looks cool or the outfit that looks cool and trendy or whatever. Now I do things more based on character. I want to make this character look alive. How would like my character, she's happy to be with her little monster friend or whatever and collecting things, and like I want to capture that. And drawing it's not easy. I mean, it's taken, 20 years to get me to where I am today as far as skill level. But like there are things that you can do to speed up your learning process. The first semester I did in art school, I had a drawing 1 class. Everybody takes it. And the first time we drew a nude figure, I could feel myself getting better at cartooning.
Wow.
So, and I wish that my high school teachers had explained that to me. I wish that they had said, hold off on drawing your anime, your cartoons, hold off on that for a second. If you draw things from real life, it will make your cartoons better.
So how do you feel like you have grown as a storyteller, as an artist certainly from that high schooler, but also, from that 8-year-old kid? How have you seen your aesthetic change? Obviously your skill has grown, but do you feel like you are just now able to kind of articulate what that 8-year-old was seeing?
In visuals, yes. In story, I still struggle because if you want to tell stories, then you should learn how stories work. And now all I'm doing is like writing notes. Like I listen to podcasts and take notes on the podcast because they're just giving me I'm like, oh, finally I'm eating,
Yes.
It's amazing. And I feel like after 7 drafts of a story over gosh, maybe like 6 years, I'm finally getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I think that this will help someone. Like, it would help little me from, 20 years ago, and it would help someone else. It's my catharsis of these feelings, but it's also my therapy.
Yeah.
Comics is cheaper than therapy. Obviously, I want other people to read this. Obviously, I feel like it is my contribution to the world, to a library, to a child's life, to a grown-up's life.
That's such a vulnerable place to be in when that child or that adult or whomever picks up this book of yours. What do you hope they take away from it?
That they're not alone in how they feel. Everyone thinks that this is the first time in human history that anyone has ever felt this way.
Right.
I assure you, there's a million dozen people feeling the way that you feel, but sometimes you just kind of want to be heard and with no input. We all need that. But, I want them to feel seen and that their feelings are valid and, maybe here's a way to go about dealing with them.
And isn't that what art is all about?
Yeah.
So that is why, in addition to your talent, you will most definitely be successful. Courtney, you are fantastic. I love your mission. I love your work. And I love that you are going to take your own vulnerability and make others feel like they're part of something. That's so fantastic. Thank you for all of that. Thank you for sitting down with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.